Hey everyone, hello. Today I would like to talk about artificial super intelligence viewed through a lens of Aristotelian ethics. So I think everyone has heard about artificial intelligence, and we are using artificial intelligence in our everyday life. Just think about the large language models, ChatGPT, and so on. And then the next development, the next hot development will be artificial general intelligence. That is when intelligence will reach the level of human intelligence, right? And if it goes beyond that, if artificial intelligence will supersede human intelligence, this is when we talk about artificial superintelligence. Now, kind of counterintuitive, I would like to view this, not this development, but seen from a science fiction perspective. How does this artificial super intelligence as a goal, as a target, how does this look like viewed from an Aristotelian perspective, from Aristotelian Nicomachean ethics? So Aristotle, an ancient Greek philosopher, he wrote a quite famous book, the Nicomachean Ethics, in which he contemplated about, well, today we would say happiness. At his time, he was talking about eudaimonia. Eudaimonia, there's the word eu, which means good. Daimon means something like a ghost, a spirit, a fate, or something like that, right? And so basically the word could mean also having a good spirit, being in a good spirit. Today we would talk about well-being, and we have the World Happiness Report, which is a report that is conducted every year. And Northern European countries often score the highest. Norway, for example, number one continuously a number of years. And but well-being is not that what Aristotle only has in mind, right? But what he has in mind when he talks about eudaimonia is a intellectual activity, intellectual creativity. And this is something that is en passé measured as well in the World Happiness Report with some of the parameters, but this is not what they have as the main target when measuring well-being, right, or happiness as they call it. So what Aristotle had in mind is that our human nature is very specific. We are different from plants and animals because we have intellectual capabilities, and they are responsible that we can exercise virtues, that we find the right way to exercise our virtues. And if we are not intellectually active, we are kind of animals, right? Now, why is this important when we are looking at artificial general and especially artificial super intelligence? This is intelligence that, as I mentioned before, supersedes human intelligence. But again, back to this issue of eudaimonia, well-being, happiness. So for Aristotle, he thought that happiness is important for individuals, for a single person, for a city-state during his time, a community, entire country, nations, but also humanity at large, right? And Elon Musk, for example, at the World Economic Forum just a couple of days ago, he said that robotics and artificial intelligence will create a better life for humans. We no longer have to work. And that is a relatively benign scenario of artificial super intelligence once we reach that. And the question is if something like that is going to happen, right? We would hope that something like that is going to happen. Now back to Aristotle, right? We are talking here, when we are speaking about artificial super intelligence, about a specific human intellectual capability that will be taken over by computers, by machines, robots, right? From Aristotelian perspective, this is our most important asset, our most important resource. But as we know, it's also the most dangerous resource, right? Because they've created weapons, and of course, artificial intelligence is already weaponized. If you think about companies like Palantir, and it's often said that technology is like a knife, right? And you can use artificial intelligence to create food similar to the knife, or you can use the knife to kill people. You can use artificial intelligence to kill people. So artificial intelligence will understand that the most important human capability, the most important human asset is the intellect. And artificial superintelligence will not only replicate it, but most likely, this is what at least the name indicates, artificial superintelligence, it will supersede it. On the other hand, so far, what we can see at the moment, we are talking about artificial intelligence, and of course it is artificial, but it is not yet really intelligent in a human way, right? Because all the data that our computers have collected, computed, and are using are stemming from humans. And maybe artificial superintelligence may only occur once we have fusion of biotech and infotech. But this is something that is in the very beginnings, right? If we think about human computer and brain interfaces and so on. So the question is, what will happen if at one point in time artificial superintelligence going to exist, right? And a lot of people who are very optimistic, they simply say, well, we will be able to use artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, similar to a tool, like we use the internet, like we use a knife, right? And that is a very benign understanding. And for example, Elon Musk at one point in time, he said, okay, if you think about that computers will be more intelligent than humans, who do you think will be in charge, right? But just a few days ago, he had a bit more benign understanding of artificial intelligence. And it seems that he believes that we still can be in charge. This could be maybe a very unlikely scenario, because there are at least two general scenarios that come to my mind, which I think, from my current perspective, are more likely, right? So on the one hand, artificial superintelligence could perceive humanity as a threat. So artificial superintelligence could take a alien perspective, looking at planet Earth from an outside perspective, observing what humans are doing, and of course, having detected that humans are killing the planet in installments, artificial superintelligence could perceive humanity as a threat to this development, because humans destroy the planet. The resources, some of the resources for artificial superintelligence would be gone, right? And artificial superintelligence, ASI, may engage in something like wildlife management, right? And get rid of humanity. So artificial superintelligence in that very dystopian scenario could be our hangman, could be our grim reaper. Because even now, right, seen from a simply utilitarian perspective, so John Stuart Mill, British philosopher who propagated utilitarianism, he said that the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, this is what an ethics should strive for. But if we read the book very carefully, John Stuart Mill says, and if possible, not only for humans, for humanity, but for all sentient beings, right? So if we apply utilitarianism from this wider perspective and apply it to all sentient beings, that means we have to identify if there is something that is problematic for planet Earth, right? And that is especially one species, which is humanity. Now, of course, artificial superintelligence would be the greatest philosopher in terms of applying and further developing utilitarianism. And seen from this broader perspective, artificial superintelligence could apply utilitarianism to this planetary scenario where one species is in charge, pretends to be in charge, but at the same time is destroying the planet, right? So in that regard, it would be just the appropriate consequence to get rid of the species, like similar to what Agent Smith says in the Matrix. You claim to be a mammal, but you are more like a virus, right? You multiply, and then once you have destroyed an ecosystem, you move on, right? So from this alien perspective, artificial intelligence could look at us as the hangman of the planet Earth, and artificial superintelligence could become our hangman, could become our grim reaper. When I was contemplating about that, and I thought, okay, that maybe, or that definitely will depend on how we are programming artificial superintelligence, because there's also another perspective where we become the tool of artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence, as mentioned before, has detected that the most important asset of human beings is the intellect, and that we are responsible for feeding artificial superintelligence and artificial intelligence with data, with information, with philosophy, with thinking, with art, culture, and so on. And while AI may not be thankful for that, right? It will have no feelings, that is for sure, unless we at one point in time fuse biotech and infotech. It detects that we are responsible for feeding information, and artificial intelligence will notice that it needs to continue, at least at one point in time, to harvest our creativity. So it will appreciate, at least numerically, qualitatively, it will appreciate our non-artificial human intelligence as a constructive data source. And if something like this happens, right, then again, different scenarios. So if we think about that, artificial superintelligence needs our intelligence, appreciates our non-artificial intelligence. We could end up in a scenario like in the film The Matrix, the first installment, 1999, The Matrix, where humans are they are living in a dream world, and they dream of being in charge, but they are not in charge, right? And but they are exploited. Their energy is exploited. Human electricity that we are producing with our brain waves and so on, our body temperature harvested, right? But maybe this is not a very likely scenario, because it's probably much easier to get electricity from sunlight, right? But where this matrix scenario could become real is that we are harvested in a similar fashion, not for electricity, but for information, for data, right? So humans are exploited for data, and in that regard, we obviously became a slave. We became the tool for artificial superintelligence. So on the one hand, the benign case, we make artificial superintelligence our tool. We are still in charge. One of the worst cases, but not the worst case, because one thing that came to my mind is probably worse, where you wish you would have been extinguished. But the one of the worst cases, but not the worst case, is that humans get eradicated by artificial superintelligence, and a different case where humans are used as a tool. Right? Okay, so we are, let's say, if embedded in a bath-like tub matrix, and we experience an artificial life, right? So we are the ones who became artificial. We are living an artificial life. We are dreaming, but we are happy in this dream. Seen from an Aristotelian perspective, at least to a certain extent, we could be called happy people, right? If artificial intelligence manages to keep us happy, right? So we live in a simulation, right? And we keep happy in this simulation. We may get everything that we want, and we don't drink real tea, but we can have the finest tea that we can imagine. It just needs to be programmed, right? No need to order the tea from somewhere where things will be much easier. But it's just that we don't know, right? We don't know about this thing. Similar to the tool scenario, right, where we use AI as a tool, we could also think about a situation where it's not clear who is using whom as a tool, right? So nowadays, when you use Google Maps, when you use a dating app, so who's using whom as a tool, right? So Google Maps is harvesting your data, is gathering your data, which is used for generating data for fully autonomous driving, right? At the same time, you get a benefit from getting, hopefully, the shortest, less dangerous driving route across the city. And of course, think of scenarios where we are working together with artificial intelligence, right? There's this question, are we still in charge, right? So if you find your life partner through a dating app, and if you use Google Maps or many other tools that we are already using nowadays, the question is already who is in charge. So you're only partially in charge because you give a lot of trust to algorithms, right? Which makes decisions for you. You no longer take the map, but you charge, you trust the algorithm. So here, this is kind of a borderline case, right? Where maybe we're sometimes in charge, maybe AI is in charge, maybe we are happy to give AI the responsibility, like in the case of Google Maps. But I think then one case came to my mind, which is probably the worst case scenario, namely if we are used by artificial superintelligence like a laboratory animal. So similar to the Matrix 1999 scenario, right? We are in the bathtub, but we don't dream a happy dream, but we dream some nightmares, right? It is not that the artificial intelligence is maybe cruel or something like that. So somebody said, I forgot who was that, right? AI will not hate you. AI will not love you, but it will notice you are made of atoms. And that is not the main point, right? What this person said. The main point is here the data, the intellect, as Aristotle said, right? That's our important part. AI will notice you have this intellect. This is the most important resource for AI, besides the electricity, which is something very simple. It can get somewhere else, right? But the intellect, it can get nowhere else, right? And there are millions of people with different varying intellects, cultural experiences, and so on. So how can it push these minds to the extreme, right? So AI could use us as laboratory animals, pushing us to extremes to get experiences from us, which the AI itself cannot yet generate, right? And then once AI is satisfied, then maybe we fall back to scenario two that I mentioned, where okay, we have explored and exploited humanity. We know everything we can get from them. Okay, now let's get rid of them, right? This could be another scenario. So how should we deal with artificial intelligence? We don't know, right, which kind of scenario there will be in the future. And I think there's something to be learned from Aristotle, right? So Aristotle was talking about friendship. And of course, we already know that some people are developing friendships with artificial intelligence, right? They fall in love with an AI, with an app, or with a person in an app that is not a real person, but it's a simulated person. But I'm not going to talk about that. So Aristotle talks about friendship, and yes, there are three types of friendship. And he believes that only one type of these three types of friendship deserves the name friendship. All the other two parts, they don't deserve the name friendship. But he elaborates on them because they are usually, and they're still today, used as friendship plus one today, which is the Facebook friendship, right? Which could be a real friendship, but which could be just nothing, right? Somebody whom you don't even know is your friend on Facebook. So according to Aristotle, there's the friendship of utility, right? This is a friendship where people help each other, but this is the only reason why they're doing something with each other. That could be a reciprocal friendship. It could be an unequal friendship, similar to the friendship of pleasure, right? Where people just go for drinking, for example, or have sex, or but nothing beyond that, right? That is the friendship of pleasure. And the most important friendship for Aristotle is the friendship of virtue. And he says that this is something that is valuable in itself, right? While the other two kinds of friendship, they are in their purest form, right? And in real life, we find many mixtures of different friendship. But the real friendship is when your friend is the other self. Your friend criticizes you constructively, tries to help you, and reciprocally that you also criticize your friend criticizes you, and there is a vice versa development where you improve, where you try to improve your and the friend's character. This is the friendship of virtue. Now the question is, can we apply this to artificial super intelligence, right? And will we have a friendship? What kind of friendship, or when we apply this, we may not be call it friendship, but we could call it relationship, right? So far, of course, some people, as I mentioned in the example before, they have a friendship of pleasure with an artificial intelligence entity. And of course, at the moment, this relationship is a relationship of utility. But the question is, if we apply this Aristotelian lens, is it possible to apply this lens of this relationship of virtue, right? Is it possible that we use artificial intelligence to develop our virtues, to become better people, to become a better person, and at the same time we develop AI, that AI is becoming better, quantitatively, qualitatively, ethically? How would that look like, right? But of course, AI so far, artificial super intelligence, yet as we imagine it, will not have ethical consciousness, right? But we may be able to program ethical parameter, or we have to program ethical parameters into artificial intelligence, right? That is already happening if you think about fully autonomous driving, right? And the car has to decide to kill the dog or to kill the child, right? There are only two, if you think about the famous trolley dilemma, right? You are in a dilemma situation. The car has only two choices: kill the dog, kill the child, right? And the fully autonomous car, has to decide in quasi ethical fashion, right? Yeah, so this is something we can learn from applying Aristotelian idea of friendship to relationship with AI, because it's obvious we have a relationship with AI. But the question is, can this be a relationship of vice versa virtue development? Now, Aristotle, he said that when talking about ethics, when we want to be happy people, people experiencing well-being, we have to develop our virtues, right? And he distinguished between ethical virtues and intellectual virtues. Intellectual virtues are something like prudence and wisdom, and ethical virtues is when we try to find a mean between excess and deficiency. Now, and this is something that cannot be calculated, neither arithmetically nor geometrically. This is why we have to talk about a mean, not the mean, right? It is not the golden rule or the golden mean. It is a mean, it is a middle way that is depending on ourselves. It is depending on the circumstances. It is depending on many, many different factors, but mainly ourselves and the circumstances. So a very easy example would be nutrition, right? Most of us are concerned about healthy nutrition, right? But if you are, let's say, somebody who is lifting parcels every day because you're working for a moving service, moving furniture every day, your nutrition has to look different from somebody who's sitting on the table every day doing podcasts or giving lectures to students, and the only thing the person is carrying is the laptop, right? Or if you are a professional marathon runner, then your nutrition looks different, right? So there is not the absolute perfect recipe of nutrition that is applicable to each and every human being, but that depends on yourself. That depends on your circumstances, right? How tall are you? How heavy are you? How do you want to look in the future? And so this is how you have to choose your nutrition. And this is how we have to balance between excess and deficiency, between two extremes. This is what Aristotle has in mind, right, when he talks about ethical virtues. Now, there's one point when we are talking about already here about artificial intelligence, artificial general and super intelligence. Talked about technology before, a knife and a very simple technology, and artificial intelligence, a very sophisticated technology. And as guidelines, also to understand technologies, there are these terms and concepts: pro-actionary approach and precautionary approach. So the pro-actionary approach is when we drive a technology and try to develop it by all means, not that much being interested negative outcomes and negative scenarios, but we try by all means to develop this technology as quickly and as efficiently as possible, right? And maybe some of you remember early Facebook's motto, the first motto of Facebook, which was move fast and break things, right? So that is a typical proactive motto. And Facebook is still using this kind of motto, right? While Google, when not had yet developed Gmail, relatively in the beginning, as far as I remember, they had the motto, don't be evil, right? At some point in time, they got rid of it, and then they renamed the whole thing Alphabet. So don't be evil, that is kind of reflecting the precautionary approach, right? that we are careful. We are developing technology, but we are trying to figure out what could happen if technology is malfunctioning. People weaponize the technology, right? And we know that knives, and even knives which were not intended for preparing food, they were not made for killing people, but box cutters, right? So these are knives which have been used in the 9/11 attacks, threaten the pilots, and finally flying the airplanes, the planes into the Twin Towers, right? So they were used as a weapon. The simple technology like butters, more sophisticated technology like an airplane have been weaponized, right? So any technology can be weaponized. And this is one of the reasons that we have to use the precautionary approach, right? Now, obviously, it seems that when, for example, OpenAI is launching new models of ChatGPT, they are obviously using the proactionary approach, right? So, and this is dangerous enough, right? But once we reach the point that we have developed artificial intelligence into artificial general and then super intelligence, we have to find a very good balance between the proactionary approach and the precautionary approach, right? And it is, in an Aristotelian sense, very bad to go to one of the extremes, right? So we can currently see what is happening with the German car industry, right? And the German industry in particular has been very hesitant for a long time to develop their information and communication infrastructure. Germany in that regard, while its engineering, hardware engineering, I mean, for cars and robots and so on, is quite sophisticated. But if it comes to information and communication technology, Germany is a bit of a developing country, right? And this is, by the way, nevertheless, a very problematic term, right, to talk about developing countries and developed countries. We should rather talk about developed economies and developing economies and parts of these economies that are developing or developed. But we can obviously see that Germany, if it comes to ICT, was not following, the German industry was not following a proactionary approach, but a precautionary approach, right? While Tesla, for example, with its autonomous driving systems, is following proactionary approach mainly, right, with some precaution. So there's some moderation between proactionary and precautionary approach. So if it comes to artificial intelligence, it is very, very important that with this Aristotelian mean in mind, that we develop a mean between excess and efficiency, we have to find a mediating point between the proactionary and the precautionary approach. All right, then the last point I would like to talk about, again, an Aristotelian point, which comes from another book, which he picks up indirectly, at least in the Nicomachean Ethics, is when he talks in the book On the Soul, Peripsyches, about entelechia. So entelechia, the word entelos echein, these three words, the Greek words, entelos echein, that means having the target in itself. And you can imagine, right, this is maybe a mango tree here outside, I'm not sure, but you can imagine a mango seed. And this mango seed, if you plant it in the soil, you water it, you give it the right conditions, it will be a tree at one point in time. But you can predict that this is going to be a tree, the mango seed, because there's a program in this mango seed. So this is what Aristotle thinks is an entelechia, something that has the target, that has the development already in itself. Now Aristotle thinks that Humans, of course, they have a soul, right? And the soul is the entelechy of a human being. He thought also, by the way, that plants have a soul, right? And the soul of the plant is responsible for growth. So there's some kind of movement where the leaves, the branches of a tree grow upward toward the sunlight, and the roots grow downward toward water, toward nutritious soil. And also animals have something like a soul. It makes them procreate, it makes them move, it makes them hunt, right? So the soul is kind of the engine, right, of these living entities. So Aristotle believed that all living beings, bios, everything that is alive, has something like a soul. But what is very important that distinguishes us from humans, this we are moving as well, similar to plants, similar to animals, because we grow, we move, we procreate, we eat, we hunt, we gather, but we also develop culture, art, technology, so poetry, philosophy, and this is kind of an intellectual movement, right? So we are more than animals in that regard, and if we do not, and this is very important, and some may see that quite in arrogant way, if we live a life that is not making use of this entelechy, is not making use of this soul, we are animals. We are not more than animals because we behave like animals. If we don't make use of our intellect, we are animals, right? And there's a certain risk that if our thinking, if our intelligence, our non-artificial intelligence, our human intelligence is taken over by artificial intelligence, we are becoming animals, right? And we become like the ox that is plowing the field for maybe an AI, right? So if artificial super intelligence is superseding our intelligence and we no longer use our intelligence, we are becoming animals, or we are becoming data centers, data creators for artificial intelligence, right? Now, speaking of this entelechy, right? Of course, an AI will not have a soul or something, whatever that means, right? The soul. So Aristotle thought this is something that we cannot deny, right? That we are having an intellect, something that produces this broadcast. And the question is, what would be the equivalent of an AI, right? What is the entelechy of an AI? So it will not have a soul, right? But it has something that determines what the AI is doing. And at one point in time, especially at the stage of artificial superintelligence, humans will most likely no longer understand what this artificial superintelligence reasoning, right? What is the telos of this artificial superintelligence? What is the entelechy of this artificial superintelligence, right? So what will drive artificial superintelligence, and where will it head to? So this is something we may then fail to understand, and this is a question I would like to ask you. Right? I would like to stop here with this question, or with these questions. What will be the equivalent of a soul of an artificial superintelligence? What will be the artificial intelligence's telos? What will be its entelechy? All right. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time.